And as promised, we've got select board candidate Donelle O'Neill with us today. He's the last one we've been able to get to, but you're going to be glad you waited. Donelle, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Tommy. I appreciate you having me, man. Thank you for this opportunity.
Listen, man, I'm going to start the question the same way I ask everybody else. Like, what have you been doing from like birth until like 6 months ago? Tell us about your life.
Whoa. So I'm 41 years old. I'm a long life resident here in town. I went to peer school, so I'll say peers pride. Get that out there. Um, I like I said, I've lived in my whole entire life. I actually worked for the town for our DPW, for our highway sanitation department from 2001 to about 2008 till I resigned. If we talk later on, I can give you a better detail why I resigned, but I resigned. Um, I'm currently a CNA for Spalding Rehab Hospital, and I do like telemonitoring, and I'm on a pulmonary unit. But I'm the only candidate who actually grew up in this town and went to elementary school here, went to high school here, still have a relationship with folks that I went to high school here with. And there's really not that many of us here left that actually really involved in town. So, I feel fortunate to still be able to be here and raise my two young, beautiful sons here. Like I said, I have a 16-year-old who's a sophomore BHS and a 6-year-old who's on a autistic spectrum, who's at the RISE program at Heath School in kindergarten, which I'm very grateful for. So like him, and I apologize if Dante comes out and makes a cameo. So growing up here in town, Tommy, like I would say, I was the chocolate chip in the cookie here, okay? Because that's what it kind of really felt like. I'm not gonna say I had it hard here and tough, but there was obstacles that I know if I were somewhere else, or a different color, or in a different social class, or I wouldn't have had to go through. For example, even resigning from the DPW, I didn't want to do that. So Tommy, I've experienced some things here in town that I know the other select board members haven't, and it shows. Like, they haven't shown any empathy for residents here in town over the years, especially when folks are speaking up and asking for the help, and they try to sweep things under the rug, or folks have been getting cut off on the microphone, white or black, and they didn't care. So I just feel it's unacceptable. I was blessed to live in this wonderful town, past our location where we are. It's a wonderful place to live. The people here, we are a diverse community, and I've learned and I've been able to make relationships with many different people here in town. And if I didn't live here, I would not have been able to do so. And Tommy, like, I enjoyed. I've been through the whole process as a resident of this town of Brookline, like I said, and even governmental wise, from being in town meeting, serving and volunteering hours for over a decade, and then serving briefly on the advisory committee, which was a fight to get on. And the frustrating thing is, Tommy, that folks feel invisible in town, and that's not okay. We all should be visible here in town. We all matter here in town, and it feels like folks don't want, especially the marginalized in town, to be visible, and it hurts because that takes away opportunities from folks in town who want a better life for themselves. I mean, most recently, like a couple of years back, I wrote a racial equity advancement fund resolution at town meeting to take a portion of that money, the revenue from town, from local. I wanted the impact fee tax money, but from the local up to 35% of local sales receipts to put back into the community to help minorities in home ownership and Wi-Fi, um, entrepreneurship, owning, being owning a dispensary in town, a minority dispensary in town. That using some of that marijuana money to actually provide opportunity, real opportunities for folks. That's not happening. And when folks speak up, Tommy, serving on the AC, I loved it. I actually loved it, and I'd always go back, if if need be. I should say that. But when I served on a AC and I spoke up on behalf of my neighbor who used to work for Sanctuary Medicinals, and his opportunities were getting taken from him, and he was asking for help from the town, and no one spoke up on his behalf. I did, Tommy, and then I got threatened with ethics violations from 2 police officers and then lawyers in town, and I just don't feel because I spoke up, I shouldn't have been threatened. Because I serve on the advisory committee. So that's another reason why I'm really I know the process. I've been through the whole process in town. I've seen where where the bumps are, and I figured out how to speak to the people to smooth it out.
So we talked a little bit about sort of where you come from and your experience. We deviated a little bit, but that was mostly what we were focused at. The next obvious question is, okay, so why the select board, right? It's not for the money, right? It's not for the fringe benefits, right? Why run for select board? Why is that where you want to focus all of your energy?
Well, it's the executive branch, Tommy. It's the branch that, for one, I'll just say this: they're the police commissioners, and when people have spoken up about the police and certain matters, the select board haven't been commissioners. They haven't spoken up on behalf of the people, I feel. And that needs to stop. The executive branch also, when it comes down to, and I'm sorry to keep keep talking about this new revenue we have, this cannabis revenue, but when it comes down to even the regulations and really obeying the law, when it comes down to host community agreements, and the receipts from marijuana, and where all that money is supposed to go, especially with the impact fee money, the extra deep police detail, and to see it actually not being used correctly, no police detail at Sanctuary Medicinals one at that time or another. That's not okay. And like, I just feel the executive branch, who really either help you in your life. I'm talking about the town, help raise you up by it be communicating with you, being transparent about the process of town, reaching out to folks to be on boards and commissions, but really having that communication is not there with the executive branch. And the decisions that the select board makes affects people's lives today, right away. It's not something that happens later on in life. I hope that helps explain it, Tommy.
It does. And I want to bring up the racial equity funding one more time, because I think I know some things about the process that some of yours might not. You were there before it was cool, right? You were talking about racial equity funding and the kinds of things that the town ought to spend it on. And we've sort of gone full circle. So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about that issue. Tell us about your effort there, and tell us where we are now.
Well, thank you, Tommy. So when first came up with the idea for the Racial Equity Advancement Fund, it stemmed from the NFL and Bob Kraft and their social equity program. So I'm like, wow, they're giving back to the people and all that, but they had funds to do it, right? So I'm like, wow, we have these new funds this new revenue in town, and we should be able to do something positive with it instead of making all this money off of it. I'll never forget the day. It was 9/11, 2017. I walked down Beacon Street, straight down Beacon Street with Dante in his baby carriage, trying to calm him down, and, get some air. I ended up at the State House. And at one Ashburn place was when the CCC, the Cannabis Control Commission's office was. So I wanted to ask some questions like, how do minorities and folks who've been impacted by this actually get involved and can make some money off it? Because it's not right. It's not equitable for just a certain class of folks to make money off of something that folks were put in jail over and still getting put in jail over. You know what I mean? It's just not right. And the people there, one of the commissioners stated, well, you need to bring this to your town. Bylaws and regulations need to happen through your town. And so I got involved and went to the ZBA and spoke at meetings, select board meetings, on and on and on, just to figure out a way, how do we get this process? So, like I said, what I came up with was the Racial Equity Advancement Fund, and just to take a portion, just a small portion from the marijuana revenue to actually help folks from home ownership to starting a dispensary if they wanted to residents in town, minority residents in town. And and it hasn't happened. It didn't happen for over 2 years. There hasn't been any talk about it, Tommy. And how frustrating it is. You know how frustrating it is when there's a neighbor that comes up to you and asks you, man, aren't you an elected official? Why is this happening? Why isn't this happening? What are you even doing this for? You know what I mean? And imagine seeing that neighbor every single day, when you walk in and out the house and have no answers for them. And so this idea was an answer. This is what we can do as a town to show that, first of all, that we love you and that we care about you, and if we want to see you, we want to be able to give any opportunity that we can for you. And so this was an idea to bring opportunities. Some people might call it reparations, whatever, but it's really an opportunity to help folks advance financially in town any way they can. And so that's the reason why I wrote it. But now we have a stabilization fund. Okay, where now all of a sudden there's about $500,000 in there. People are right now have been talking about it, about where that money is going to go. And so that discussion is happening. There's warrant article 28 that's coming up for special legislation to have the Racial Equity Advancement Fund money be spent a certain way, but using that money through the impact fee money instead of, let's say, local receipts, but actually a warrant article. So it'd have to be a home rule petition. The state would have to agree. You know how that works, Tommy. And we can get it going. So finally now we're getting that ball rolling, and it feels great. I really see promise in this, and this actually helping folks, and really what opportunities now. So I'm excited about, Tommy. I know we have to vote on this at town meeting for special legislation, and I don't see town meeting saying no to this, because it's all about opportunities. We've already voted for it once, So thank you.
Yeah. So, you talk about seeing people who maybe others in town aren't seeing, and hearing people whose voices aren't being heard. Can you expand on that a little bit? Tell us about how Select Board member Donelle O'Neill is able to elevate those voices, able to make sure that those members of our community are seen. What are you going to do to make that a reality?
So thank you, T. So what I found hardest is our community is made up of folks who work in this community as well, and the folks who live in this community, And personally, I felt when I worked for the DPW that no one who worked for the DPW really knew how our town operated and ran. And although Bobby Allen, okay, would make a cameo, right before July, July, the fiscal year for town meeting, and would talk have the whole DPW around and talk about the budget, and ask the DPW there like any questions. Okay, so you have the water department there, you have the park department, you have the highway and sanitation, and folks had an opportunity to say how they felt, what was going on in the what was, how they were feeling with the equipment and hours, and that ever since Bobby left, I don't recall that ever happening. There's been that miscommunication. Now by the grace of God, I've known Erin from the DPW for forever, since she became the DPW, and she's always been accessible. And I mentioned that talk to her, and it was like, I don't know, over 20 years ago was the last time we had something like that. And I'd like to bring that back for the DPW, for the firehouse. Like, I didn't even know, Tommy, after speaking with some of the fire folks, that, cancer in the firehouses, okay? And and the upgrades on how bad and needed that we need, our firehouses need to be upgraded, especially 5 and, well, really 7, but 5 and 7, and having talks with the fire department and folks on the firefighters. I grew up with some of those same firefighters, that went to elementary school with me, the high school, the 09, and we still talk. And to know that the firehouses are so messed up, and the situation, how it's even, I'm not saying ours specifically, but firehouses causes cancer has been a thing, and no one really knows about it, until I reached out to the fire department, see what was going on, and I found out about it. I think we need to be listening more to the departments who actually help run the town, other than the police department. Like, we have the fire and we have our DPW, and that need focus on as well. And I feel that hasn't been happening. So I hope I'm answering your question right. I think there's need to be more communication with the staff that gets our town, keeps our town running.
So you mentioned that select board members are police commissioners, which is true. And you talked about growing up in town and, still knowing folks who are civil servants who grew up in Brookline, who are working in Brookline.
Yeah.
And, no person can run for office today and not talk about policing. You're a Black man who grew up in this town.
Yeah.
I got to say, talk to me about policing. What's working, what's not working, where are the real issues? Where are people getting it wrong? Where is the police department getting it wrong? I don't expect a dissertation. I don't expect you to have all the answers, but I know you got some opinions and I want to hear about them.
Thank you, Tommy. So yes, like I said, I've grown up with some of these police officers here and their families, okay, and even Black officers, new officers. So there was a time at town meeting, I forget what we were talking about in the budget, and there was a debate at town meeting, and some folks wanted some of the money from the new hires of the police to go to, I want to say it was housing, or I forget what's the food bank, right? And I couldn't do it, Tommy. Okay, I didn't want to vote that way because I knew these, and this was before the whole walk and talk conversation happened. Okay, so I know some of these families. Okay, who, and I'll say her name, Felina Robinson. I know my whole life. Okay, and her son, who's as a new cop. We had fear that he would have lost his job. I couldn't have that on my heart and in my conscience, Tommy. And it felt like to have a familiar face that we know, and then I have a 16-year-old man and a 6-year-old Black man, to see a familiar face or someone that grew up in this town was better than not having that there. Tommy. So and that's why I voted the way I did, to keep that money there for these officers. And I caught some flack for it, okay, Tommy. But I want people to see the bigger picture, and it comes down to our decisions affect everybody. And and that decision would have affected someone from this town who's lived here in a long time, and I couldn't risk it. So, you know, the body camera discussion, Tommy, at town meeting, I wrote a warrant article 6. I tried to go off the pilot program from Boston and trying to incorporate it here, just to protect everyone in town, from citizens to police. And what town meeting is, you know, it is. It's about a debate, having a debate and a discussion on what we want to see happen in town. And I regret, and I'm going to say this to you, Tommy, that I actually pulled that discussion off the table now, because we're not talking about it. We're discussing things like the walk and talk program, and then the select board is saying we're going to recommend the walk and talk program back to Brookline Housing, and that's something that they should have done a long time ago. And then with the school resource, Tommy, the select board wants to bring that back to the housing. Instead of wasting $50,000 they just spent on the reform committee and the reimagine committee, coming with that, like, that's a waste of money. That wasn't okay. That money could have went to Wi-Fi. So, like, the police, I've had my interactions with the police, good and bad, growing up here in town, and I've learned to live. Earl Simmons just passed away, DMX, and I use this at my high school quote was, "To live is to suffer, but to survive is to find meaning in the suffering." So I feel like I've survived, and I'm finding meaning in everything I've gone through to prevent the negative, but uplift the positive that I was able to have in town. I want trying to do that for everybody, and that's even with good and bad relationships with the police. And I felt the body cameras, Tommy, would have helped just the police and regular citizens. And I know there needs to be discussion about it, right? From everybody, but I want to see that happen. So I really regret, like, taking that off the table. See, at last town meeting, because I was under the impression, and everyone else was, that the collective bargaining agreement, because the police already agreed with it, yada, 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 that there would be discussion, but there hasn't been any talk about it. Both reform and reimagine didn't talk about it. So it's like, I feel as a select board member, so I served on personnel I served on the AC. My subcommittees was public safety and personnel. Janice Kahn was the chair for public safety, and I learned so much from Janice on the process and the relationships with the police, and how do we expand the trust? How do we get the trust back with the people in it? And it's all about, I feel more, if I when elected May 4th, I would try to have more public hearings in regards to police relationships and what I would ask the police department to really have some public hearings, man, just to have the public weigh in on some things that are on everyone's heart and mind. There's no public discussion. And we have the tools to do it now, with the Zoom. And if there's a way where there's like no open meeting law, something, whatever, that needs to happen. Some more communication with the police, and I would try to do my best to work with the police union, like Michael Keaveney, and them to actually make that happen. Talk about how to do it.
So now we got about 30 seconds left. So give us some last thoughts, closing thoughts.
Well, so first of all, I'd like to say my phone number. My phone number is 857-243-3602. Once again, it's 857-243-3602. My website is DonelleO'Neill.com. Please reach out to me if you have any questions, any suggestions. If you want to hold a sign for me, please give me a phone call. I don't need any donations. I don't need any money, any more money or anything like that. I have my signs, I have my flyers. All I really need is your vote and your support and your vote. So if you can just reach out to me, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for doing this,
Donelle
Tommy.
O'Neill, No worries, no complaints. Always a cool breeze. So glad you could join us on Brookline Interactive Group today. Wish you the best of luck. As everyone knows, I say it all the time. Star Wars Day, Tuesday, May 4th. Get out and vote. Polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. I'm
Thank you,
Tommy Vitolo. You're watching Brookline Interactive Group. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.